The Caretaker's Horizon. There is a curious thing about love, the kind of love that flows outward endlessly like a river that forgets its source. Many women live their lives as this river. They give and they give again, time, tenderness, understanding, until the stream becomes invisible, merging with the ocean of everyone else's needs. And they call this selflessness virtue. But there comes a quiet moment, somewhere between a sigh and a heartbeat, when she wonders, where did I go? You see, the world praises the caretaker, the mothering force, the one who holds others together. Yet it seldom asks who is holding her. It is as though her purpose has been borrowed by everyone else, and when she looks toward her horizon, she sees not her own sunrise, but the light she kindled for others. Alan Watts would remind us, you are not a role, you are the dance itself. To exist only as a function, as the one who helps, is to forget the movement that is you. The dance needs rhythm, not routine. The caretaker's horizon is not a punishment, but a passage, the moment when giving transforms from duty to art, when you no longer serve because you must, but because your joy overflows, when you remember that caring for others and caring for yourself are not opposites, they are reflections in the same mirror. And so, this first endgame is a choice to continue dissolving into the lives of others, or to rise, not in rebellion, but in realization, to see that love, when unbalanced, becomes a cage, but when shared inwardly and outwardly, it becomes freedom. The world does not need you to vanish to be valuable. The horizon is still yours to walk toward. You are not just the warmth you give, you are the fire itself. The Lone Summit. There is a peculiar kind of loneliness that hides inside success. You climb the mountain, each step hard won, each decision carved from your will, and at last you stand at the top. The world below admires you. They call you powerful, unstoppable, independent, and yet the air is thin up here. It is quiet, so quiet that you can hear the echo of your own heartbeat asking, is this it? The lone summit is not about failure. It is the illusion that victory must come alone. We are taught to fear dependence, as if needing someone diminishes our worth. But Alan Watts would say, the flower does not bloom in isolation. It blooms because the soil, the sun, and the rain conspire together in harmony. In the same way, no life truly stands apart. Even the mountain needs the valley to be a mountain. But somewhere along the way, we learn that to prove our strength, we must close our hearts. We call it freedom. But sometimes it's just fear disguised as pride. The truth is, solitude can be sacred, a place of clarity, not exile. When chosen consciously, it becomes a temple. When enforced by expectation, it becomes a cage. To live well at the lone summit is to understand this balance. You may walk your own path, but you do not have to walk it alone, because strength does not mean carrying the world on your shoulders. It means knowing when to let someone walk beside you. It is not weakness to reach out, it is wisdom. It is not surrender to rest, it is self-respect. So if you find yourself standing on that cold peak, remember, the climb was never meant to end there. The summit is not the finish line. It is a moment to pause, breathe, and look around. There are other souls climbing too, somewhere in the mist, searching for the same warmth, the same meaning. And if you listen closely, beyond the wind, you might hear them calling your name. The Eternal Negotiator. There is a strange theater that many women perform in, a dance between worlds that never quite meet. On one side, the call of ambition. On the other, the pull of love, family, duty, and belonging. And somewhere between them, she becomes the negotiator of her own soul. The eternal negotiator lives in the in-between. She is fluent in compromise. She balances the calendar, the conscience, the expectations, all at once. Each day she redraws invisible borders between what she wants and what the world demands. And though she moves gracefully, there's a quiet ache beneath the poise, a whisper that says, when will it be enough? Alan Watts once said that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. Yet society teaches her to manage life like an endless equation. Balance this, trade that, adjust here, minimize there. She forgets that balance is not stillness, it is a rhythm. The dancer does not remain frozen in one pose. She sways, she shifts, she flows. The tragedy is that the world often mistakes exhaustion for success. The more she balances, the more it asks her to balance. But the truth, the beautiful, terrifying truth, is that she doesn't need to negotiate everything. Some things are not meant to be bargained. Peace, purpose, joy, they are not on the table for trade. When she stops negotiating, she begins living. She no longer splits herself into fragments to please every voice. She learns to say no without guilt and yes without fear. That is not selfishness, it is self-respect. So the eternal negotiator comes to her turning point, when she realizes that harmony isn't achieved by pleasing everyone, but by being whole within herself. And in that stillness, the noise fades. Because the world doesn't fall apart when she stops negotiating. It simply rearranges itself around her truth. The inherited script. Most people live their lives by a story they did not write. Before a woman takes her first breath, 1,000 invisible hands begin crafting her script, the expectations of family, culture, religion, and history. Be kind, but not too bold. Be graceful, but never too loud. Be successful, but never threatening. And so she learns her lines perfectly. She performs them beautifully. Yet somewhere deep within, she wonders whose play this really is. Alan Watts once said, "We seldom realize for most of us our thoughts, feelings, and actions are largely controlled by the culture into which we were born." The inherited script is precisely this, the quiet puppeteer behind our choices. It shapes how we love, how we age, how we dream. It tells her what kind of woman is good and what kind is too much. And if she dares to improvise, the audience grows restless. But here is the secret. You were never meant to be a character in someone else's story. You are the playwright, the actor, and the stage all at once. Life is not a role to play, it is a song to be sung. The great courage, then, is not rebellion for its own sake, but authorship. To look at the script handed down through generations and say, this no longer fits me. To choose which lines to keep and which to burn. Because the story of womanhood is not static, it evolves each time a woman chooses truth over tradition. You see, awakening is not about destroying the past, but about stepping out of its shadow. You can honor where you came from and still walk a new path. You can love your ancestors and still refuse their limitations. When she stops reciting and starts writing, she moves from inheritance to creation. And in that moment, the script becomes hers, alive, fluid, and infinite. The inherited script ends where freedom begins. And freedom begins the instant you realize you were never born to repeat a story. You were born to tell your own. The vanishing self. There comes a point when the mirror no longer reflects a face, only fragments of one. She has lived so long through roles, responsibilities, and rhythms that her own outline begins to blur. The laughter once hers now belongs to others. The dreams that once whispered her name have grown silent. This is what I call the vanishing of the self. Alan Watts would say that life, when overly identified with its masks, becomes a performance mistaken for truth. The woman who forgets her own name beneath titles, mother, partner, leader, caretaker, is not gone. She is merely hidden beneath the costumes. And yet, there is something profoundly sacred about this disappearance. For only when the false self dissolves can the real one emerge. It begins with a kind of stillness, a pause in the endless motion. At first it feels like emptiness, a frightening void, but then she realizes the emptiness is not absence. It is space, the space where her true voice lives, quietly waiting. To vanish, in this sense, is not to be lost, but to be found anew. Like the seed that must crack open to release its life, she must allow the old identities to fall away. The burnout, the exhaustion, the collapse, these are not failures, but transformations. The fire that consumes the mask also reveals the face beneath it. And in that rediscovery, there is no rush. The soul does not hurry to return. It breathes, it stretches, it reclaims its light. She begins again, not as the sum of others' needs, but as the pulse of her own being. The vanishing self, then, is both ending and beginning. It teaches that what disappears is not what defines us. It is what confines us. And when she steps through that threshold, she does not return to who she was. She returns to who she has always been. The world may call it an ending, but it is, in truth, the quiet birth of something infinite. The authored ending. And so, at last, we come to the final act, the authored ending, the place where a woman no longer waits for life to happen to her, but begins to shape it through her. It is not the end in the tragic sense, no curtain falling, no silence. It is instead the moment she realizes she holds the pen. You see, most lives are spent reacting to circumstance, to expectation, to the scripts of others. But there comes a gentle awakening when she understands that destiny is not a force that sweeps her along. It is a story written line by line, choice by choice. Alan Watts might have said, "The meaning of life is just to be alive." It is so plain, so obvious, and so simple, yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. The authored ending is the surrender of that panic. It is the calm realization that she needs no permission to be whole. She begins to build a life that feels like her, one not driven by fear of being too much nor guilt for being too little. She stops performing and starts being. Here, endings lose their sting because they are no longer tragedies. They are chapters turning naturally into the next. She learns that closure is not something granted by others. It is something created within. And so she writes her own final pages with intention, not as someone escaping her past, but as someone integrating it. This is the woman who rests not because she is tired, but because she is free. The one who chooses peace over performance, presence over perfection. Her ending is not a retreat from the world, but a return to it, wiser, softer, infinite. The authored ending is where the way it all ends becomes the way it truly begins. Because the real secret, the quiet revelation, is this. You were never meant to find meaning in someone else's story. You were meant to write it in your own voice, in your own time, in your own way.